Good morning, y'all. How you doing? I almost didn't make it in here. I was feeding my cats and my dogs and all that stuff, and I was adjusting this lamp so that maybe you won't be staring at the light the whole time I have my glasses on. I don't know. Anyway, good morning. I'm glad that you returned. I know probably not many people are on here yet. Today I'm just going to continue to tell the story that I started last week, and I just want y'all to know that I take this story very seriously, and it's hard for me to tell the story. That's why I wrote it down in a book. But I feel like it's a story that needs to be shared. It's still an open case, so if there's anyone that has any information or wants to repent of anything and get right and go in and tell, law enforcement what happened in this story in real life. I'm telling what happened to me in real life about it, but I am not a part of the story itself. I'm a part of the spirit that came afterwards to kind of give us clues as to what had happened to her. So it's almost 10 o'clock. It's 9:59. So I'm going to go ahead and open this is not a jewelry show. And I decided, these are not the glasses I like. Look, there's some more sparkly glasses. Let me see if I can find the glasses I like. I probably didn't bring them out here. Well, it looks like we're going to get to look at these glasses today. Y'all, I ordered so many pairs of glasses. My mother left me like 6 pair, and I've already lost all of them except for 1 pair. I'm terrible with glasses. I think it's because I'm really not supposed to wear any. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead. I did make a, what do you call that, a chat for this program. And I enabled a few people that I know to be able to chat if they want to in the chat. If you want to be a part of that chat, you can personally message me. I'm going to kind of monitor, look at that. I'm going to kind of monitor the chat because I don't want people fighting with each other or being rude or ugly. Remember, when we're angry, we're just going to say, when pigs fly. Because there's no place for that here. This is just a place for us to share our experiences and not to jump on other people for their experiences or whatever. The reason I decided this is that I was watching this street preacher. He's gotten pretty famous, and he goes out and ministers, and he does a lot of things that are controversial, I suppose. But I watch him just to discern, and all of a sudden, people are attacking me for a comment that I've made to him. People are attacking me because they don't believe the same way that I do. And I think that is rude, inappropriate, and I'm not going to... And it's just the way that people are when they go into chatting online. And if that's a part of your life, I would ask you to please reconsider that. We're supposed to... Anything that we do with our mouth and our words either creates or destroys. So you're either creating and inspiring, or you're destructive and destroying with your words. You actually can cause things to happen with your words or cause them not to happen. And so, just think about God. He created the world by saying, let there be. He used his words. So I've really tried to discipline myself in the way that I use my words. And it's not that I'm trying to, I just don't want any negative. So if you're negative and you have a need for that, you keep that to yourself or, move along because we're here to share testimonies. And like I said, if there's anybody that has something in their life they need to get straightened out, I encourage you to do that because you're only going to find peace and happiness. No, you won't find life becomes a bed of roses or anything. My life certainly is not a bed of roses, but you will have more peace when you're going through the trials that you go through. That's all for my preaching today. So there you go. I was called to be a preacher, Here, y'all, I'm going to show y'all the jewelry that I got. See, I mostly think I'm talking to my cousins, my aunt, and everybody, so I just talk to y'all like your family. And these are my other ugly glasses, y'all. Well, until everybody... Oh, it's 10:02, so everybody's probably here. So about 10:05, we'll get started with our story. And I don't see any comments. I did not block comments. So if you're not able to make a comment, I'll have no clue as to why I just made it public. on here. But as far as in the chat, I did limit that, but you can be on it if you let me know. Look at these. I got these from Sharon, my friend Sharon Trickett, and I haven't put her link on here yet, but I will if she doesn't after a while. Aren't those cute? $8, y'all. So I buy these for myself, for my family, for my ladies that I have parties with. A lot of this is for me though. Look at that. Isn't that cute? It's a little ring. It's going to be so great for the holidays. $8. You could give these for gifts. They're so cute. And if you don't like to watch lives, like as in watching people sell things live, I am trying to sell these to y'all. Y'all go over to Sharon's jewelry channel when I put it on here and buy some jewelry from her. Y'all, my voice is kind of hoarse. I was sick at the first part of the week. The devil can't attack me by making me rob a bank or go hurt somebody or anything, so he attacks me through illness. Sharon, you forgot to take your number back. I'll have to give it back to you. Looky there, that's a little bracelet. Isn't that cute? I promise I'm fixing to start the story. I just want to show my friend Sharon. The Lord told me that if for him to promote me into the next level, that he wants to put me in, not because I'm anything, but because I want to have a, as high level with the Lord that I can, because all this is about him anyways. For me, for y'all, it's ghost stories, I know, and that's fine. Look at this. This is so cute. Anyway, this is like a princess bracelet. Look at that. It's from my friend Sharon's website, y'all. So I watch her live, but she does have just a website you can go to, and I will put it on here after the show. I just was running late this morning. I think, other than I think I have a brown bracelet, and then that's it. So I just try to show y'all the jewelry when we're waiting for everybody to get on. Now it looks like some people are coming on, so I'm going to start the story in a minute. And I know that a lot of y'all watch by replay, so you can just skip through this part if you don't want to watch it. All of this is paparazzi jewelry, and it is sold by my friend Sharon. I don't sell it or make money on it or anything. I just buy it. These are my other glasses from Temu. Look, they're already falling apart, but aren't they cute? I love sparkle. Okay, y'all, I actually took a few notes. I was looking for notes that I had taken when I did the podcast for that other person, but I could not find them, so I had to make new notes last night so that maybe I'll stay on path here. So today we're going to pick up where we left off last week, and I think that last week I was at my house. We had already gone over to the property and gotten the barrel and her things, and then we and then when we went to my house, we were sitting there going through her things. Oh, y'all, you need to get, sorry, I must have some sort of AD whatever, y'all, Z, because I want you to get water. Remember, the Lord told us water. We have to stay hydrated. Take the time to drink your water and get your lipstick. This is a cheap lipstick. It doesn't have to be expensive. You need lipstick or chapstick to keep your lips from getting so dry when you're talking. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to start selling lipstick, y'all. Anyway, when we were at the house, because the people that I see pop up on here, they've known me for years, so they know how I am about makeup. Anyway, and if my makeup bothers you, I'm sorry. I could just wear no makeup and pull my hair back in a ponytail, but that wouldn't be me, okay? Anyway, so we had gotten the barrel and all of her things. We had gone over to that RV and investigated. My two friends and I, my friend, her son who was in his 20s, and myself. And we went over there and got, oh, I don't need this to tell y'all the story. Thank goodness. We went over there to get her things, and we got them and took them back to my house. And we were sitting in there, going through the things, seeing if we could find any more evidence that would help the police with clues and things like that. And my friend kept saying, well, what are you going to do with this stuff? Because I had the barrel in the back of my truck. It stank really bad. I'm not sure where I ended last week exactly, so I may be repeating a little bit. which I tend to do sometimes, and I tell the story backwards sometimes, but I hopefully will remember and reverse it. But anyway, we were sitting there going through things, and my friend's son got really sick and had to go outside because there was just a spirit of oppression, evil, want to bind you, want to harm you along that came with that stuff. And maybe it's just because we were all three pretty sensitive. But anyway, he went outside, and she said, "What are we going to do with this stuff? You know, are you going to give it to the police? What are you going to do?" And I said, "No," because I said, I don't know. I'm going to call her family. I said, but right now, I'm not giving it to them until her family tells me what they want me to do with it, because, you know, they don't act interested in anything. I'm pretty sure it was a tactic on their part to get me to go ahead and do whatever I would do that might bring forth some information. I can't say that for sure, but that's my thought. Anyway, and y'all, my eyes are bloodshot a lot of times because I have that, you know, disease that causes your eyes to water and all the things. So I rub my eyes, and it's all related to my thyroid. But anyway, so I just don't want y'all to think I drink or do drugs, because I don't. I'm just crazy. Anyway, I'm trying to think. Oh yeah. So we're sitting there, and she's saying, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm calling her family." So I knew that from the article that I had read out of the newspaper that her family were police officers. A couple of them were her sister and her sister's husband in a town about 5 or 6 hours from where I lived. And so I called that police department, and I asked if they had any Jennifer Williams on the roster. Now, I think I did tell this part last time, but this will catch us up. And yes, I did, I think. Anyway, and I wound up talking to the sister, and she told me, I told her all about what had gone on in the salon, all the way up to seeing the spirit in my salon. And she told me, I asked her what she wanted me to do with the things, and she said, just observe, and we will come down. In a couple of weeks, we're going to come down there, and we're going to get those things from you. And she believed everything I said. She didn't say that, but I could tell she believed at least that I believed what I was saying. She believed that I believed what I was saying. I wasn't telling her a lie on my part. I was telling her the truth as best I knew it. And in my mind, it was all true, and it did turn out to be true. But anyway, she did tell me that the husband had gotten involved in a satanic cult, and that the sister had gone to 2 of the services. The first one was not that big a deal. She was leery, but the second one, they revealed who they were. And being a Christian person, she could not let him stay involved in that. She didn't want to be around that sort of thing. She wasn't willing to participate. So we can say that she was martyred for being a Christian, because I know she's not here. I can't prove that because I don't have her body. But I did as much proving of it as I could, and that's what this story is about. But anyway, the thing is, they already had much of this evidence. They just waited for me to validate, and if I knew anything further, just with the abilities that God's given me to see and hear. And he also gave me a dream, and not a dream, a vision about what happened. But anyway, so several times. So oh, I have my notes. Just a minute. I know why I need my glasses, so I can read my notes, y'all. Okay, so there's where we are. I talked to the sister, and then my daughter had called during that time and asked that if that lady had gotten a hold of me, and I said yes. Is that how she got my number? Because I had left the number to my hair salon when I had called and left the message, and I did not know how she had gotten my cell phone number. Well, she had called my salon, and my daughter had given her my number, the sister of the ghost in the hair salon. Anyway, so then my daughter asked me if I could come pick her up and take her home, because her husband can come get her or something, and she needed to go get the grandkids, and she needed to go by the bank and do a lot of things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have that barrel in the back of my truck, and it stinks. But of course I did it because she's my daughter, and I needed to go do that. Well, I said goodbye to my friends, and we decided that I would just keep those things there at the house. There was some information that the young man took with him he just wrote it down so that he could research on the computer and try to help me in the, investigation. We were told by the sheriff's department that we could investigate anything we wanted to. We could talk to whoever we wanted to. If they wanted to answer us, that was up to them. And we couldn't trespass or stalk anybody or any of those things. Oh, y'all can still see this light, y'all. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to. It's these glasses, but I have to read. I'll look down. Anyway, so I went back and to work. My friends left, and I went back to work and got my daughter and took her to go get the grandkids. And then she needed to go by the bank. So I'm going to sit back a little, maybe. So everybody was bugged by my light shining in the eyes in these glasses. Anyway, I took her back by the bank to make her deposit, because she needed to make a deposit, and the ATM wouldn't work. So then she said, well, Mom, I really need to get this deposit in. Can you go by the other ATM? There was another branch of the bank in another place. And she said, will you go by the other ATM and make my deposit, because I really need to get this deposit in. And I said, okay. So, I was just going to give her some money, but she needed to pay some bills or something. So she said she needed that deposit to go in. So I said, okay, but I really didn't want to stay in that truck any longer because it stank so bad. It just smelled like dead animals, and the kids were grossed out. It was awful. But I dropped them off at their house, and I went on to the next bank. And since I went to the next bank, I had to go back by my hair salon and the strip center, and I was over there, and I went in, and I thought that I would go in and ask someone there to help me open the barrel. I still didn't know what was in the barrel or if it had any significance in the case or anything, and so I was trying to get it open. Well, the person that owned the center said he was too busy to do that, and really he was, and he wasn't too sure about this ghost story, and that's because he's a rational person. But anyway, but his dad and I were real good friends, and so I said, well, is your dad here? And he said, no, he wasn't there. And so I said, well, okay. And as I was leaving the strip center, I drove past. I saw that there were some guys down there at the property where the missing woman had lived before she disappeared. I saw that there were some people down there, and they were burning trees, they were clearing off the land, everything. And remember, the FBI had told me that there was nobody down there, that there was nothing going on the property. So apparently we had our wires crossed as to which property we were talking about, or perhaps they went on a day before they started the work or something, but I don't think so, because when I called, they had already started. Supposedly, according to the lady that lived next door to them that gave me the card, they had already started the clearing of the land. So anyway, I went by there, and so I saw these guys burning trees and everything, and I drove past. I'm going to try to just go by memory instead of looking at my notes. So I drove past, and I kind of looked at their trucks. There's like 3 big dually trucks and 3 big old guys, standing out there talking, and all of the trees and everything were burning off in the background. And so I went down the road a little bit, and I turned around and I came back, because I thought, I can handle them. What are they going to do to me out here in broad daylight? What if they're part of the cult, that may have killed her? We're pretty sure. I mean, she had called the sister, one of the other sisters, 2 weeks before she went missing, and told them all about this, going to this church, and her wanting her husband not to be involved, and she was going to tell authorities what was going on there and all the things. And of course her family was part of the authorities, but she didn't call the sister that was part of the authorities. She called a different sister. Otherwise it may have turned out differently, I don't know. Anyway, so 2 weeks later she went missing. So anyway, that was, in my mind, that these guys may be a part of that group that may or may not know what happened to her. So anyway, I stopped to talk to them, and they were, in that neck of the woods. Everybody out there was a good old boy, they were rough, and they were just rednecks. My dad was a redneck. I'm kind of a redneck myself sometimes, not to the degree I'm tough. I can take a lot of things and do a lot of things. That's what I'm going to say for a redneck. You learn how to do with what you have, and you work and get things done, and that's what rednecks do. But you don't mess with them usually. But anyway, I was a little nervous, but I stopped and I pulled up there and I said, hi, I'm Cathy. I own the hair salon over there at the strip center. And I remember the one big old guy says, oh, you're the hairdresser. I said, yes. And he said, I understand we have a ghost. And I said, it kind of went all over me because it was like he was teasing me. But, I tease around, I kid around a lot too. So normally that wouldn't bother me, but I'm so serious about this situation that it kind of got to me. And I said, yes, we do. And we have a responsibility. I don't even know where those words came from. And he said, what do you mean we have a responsibility? I don't have any kind of responsibility. And I said, yes, you do. And I do. We all do. And he said, well, what is my responsibility? I said, I don't know. What do you plan to do with her things? And he said, you mean that trash in the RV? And I said, well, to you it's trash, but to her family, it's her things. And he said, oh, he said, her? He said, it's a woman? I said, yeah, my ghost. He didn't know the ghost was a woman. I didn't either when it first started, but we were pretty sure this was who it was. And he said, I never thought about it being a woman, And he said, well, that his boys. I said, her family may want her things. They do want the things that I collected, but I forgot to ask them if they wanted the other things, but I'm pretty sure they will. And I said, her sister. When I talked to her, and he said, you talked to her sister? And I said, yes, I did. And she wants the things that I got, but she may want the other things. And he said, well, honey, you can have anything in that RV you want. He said, my boys were going to come out here in the morning and rake it out and burn it, because I asked him what they were planning to do with her things. And he said, well, my boys were going to come out here in the morning and rake it all out and burn it. So if my daughter hadn't asked me to take her home and gone by that first ATM and it didn't work, where I had to go back up by my shop, because I would have gone the other way home, and they would have raked all of the things, the rest of the things in the RV out the next morning, and they would have burned. So her family would have never gotten her things other than the few little items that I had. So that was, I think, a God thing right there, intervening. Okay, so let me go to the next part. So I made plans. I asked the sister, I said, why had y'all not already gotten her things? And she said, well, they had put a no trespass order on us. The husband did, and we weren't allowed to go onto the property. So they weren't allowed to go on the actual property that her sister owned, because there was a no trespassing in their law enforcement. They're not going to break the law, and the other police were investigating, so they just had to stay out of that part. But of course they searched the area. They, like any other family, they went looking for the sister for over a year after this happened. But anyway, she told me that they were going to come down in 2 weeks. So I made plans to go back, since the man told me that I could have anything in the RV that I wanted. But he told me that I could not have the RV itself, because he had already promised that to a friend of his that was going to take it and use it for a deer camp or something. So I made plans to go get the rest of her things, but I didn't want to go over there by myself, because even though I had now had permission of both the lady next door to go on her property anytime, and the man that owned the property gave me permission. Now, he had bought it from the bank, because apparently the property had been taken for some reason. The husband was nowhere in the picture, which I was glad, because I didn't know, what he was like or anything. But the man had taken over he had purchased the property. Now he was going to build something on there, and so he was clearing it off to build something. Well, anyway, but I still had this sense of evil and of something watching me, and I'm a strong spiritually. Not bragging, y'all. That's something that I've come to because of all of the pain in my life that I've had to lean on God for, for help when I had trouble or sickness or whatever. A lot of trouble in my life. So, we have to, life is about overcoming each obstacle. And I don't know how people do it on their own and maybe I'm just a needy person. I don't know. But I need the Lord to help me to overcome when I am laying at death's door, or my family member has died, or someone's trying to harm me. I need God's help. Well, anyway, I made plans to get the rest of her things. I didn't want to go by myself, but I couldn't get anybody to go with me because I was going to go. I had to go at a time when I was off of work, and I owned my salon, so I had to be there almost all the time. Anyway, I couldn't get anybody to go, so I decided to go over there by myself. Now, this was at 10 o'clock in the morning, like now in the morning, going down a public highway where there's a strip shopping center next door to it. And, it is in a rural area. Next to that property is mostly trees. There are houses in there, but they're sparse, there's a subdivision. But she was kind of in an area that was kind of secluded where things could happen and people wouldn't see, so I was a little nervous. I just felt the spirits, for one thing. And then you didn't know what people were attached to, what people those spirits were attached to in the world to cause them to come and do harm to somebody. Well, anyway, I wound up going over there by myself. And this is going to be, the next part of this story is going to be an unbelievable, fantastical kind of tale. But I am telling the truth, and it's the worst supernatural experience I've ever had. So be ready. Anyway, be ready to hear something that's unbelievable, but it's the truth. Anyway, so I'm going to go over there by myself, and I'm thinking it's daytime. There's people going back and forth to the strip center. I'll be okay. I'll just have to really put on my armor of God when I go in there for these spirits, and God's going to, do battle for me, and I'm going to be okay. Well, I get in my truck. I was already in my truck, and I was at the strip center trying to get the man to, no, I'm sorry. Different day. See how I get mixed up in my story? No, I was not already at the strip center. I was at the strip center because I was leaving the hair salon. That's why I was at the strip center. And I pull out, and I'm going down the road. It just wasn't because the man was helping with the barrel. I'm going down the road, and it's like 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. And as I get to the driveway, which is just a quarter mile maybe down the road, I'd already picked up speed to like 45 miles an hour. And I was slowing down now to turn into the driveway. So I slowed down, I don't know, 20, 25 miles an hour. And I turn, and I'm going down the driveway. And it is a long driveway that goes all the way to the back of the property before you get to the RV and the barn that stood behind it. Well, I go in, and I'm going about 20 or 25 because I need to hurry up and get over there and get these things done and get them in my truck and, get her things for her family. I did notice there was quite a few things in there, and I wanted to make sure that I had time to get them all out. It was hot, all of that. So I am going down that driveway, and all of a sudden it was like a strong wind. Now, this was the middle of July, I think, and it was hot. There was no wind or anything like that. Otherwise, I could see if it was a windy kind of place or something. But all of a sudden, this strong wind, like when you pass by an 18-wheeler and you're in a little car and it nearly blows you off the road, it just hit the front of my car. This strong wind. And all of a sudden, I was in drive going at least 25 miles an hour, I think. And that wind started pushing me backwards, my truck backwards, with my foot on the gas pedal and my truck in drive. I drove a Chevy 1500 step side with a camper on the back of it, and my truck was going backward faster than it had been going forward. And it took a minute for me to wrap my mind about this, because nothing like that. I've had spirits throw things at me. I know how forceful and strong a spirit can be. I've had spirits touch me, all the things. I know they could hurt us if they're allowed, or if we're not on guard, or if, yeah, I was on guard spiritually, but I had no idea in my mind that a spirit could ever do this kind of thing. Anyway, pushed my truck backwards with me and going down the driveway, and by the time my mind wrapped around what was going on, I started to fight back. I'm not a flight person. I'm a fight person. I'm going to cry for 2 weeks after it happens, but in the moment, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to fight. I'm not going to run away from the fight. So I didn't know how I could fight except to slam on my brakes. So I slammed on my brakes. I didn't even know if the truck would stop when I slammed on my brakes. But I slammed on my brakes, and the truck came to like a stop, but I was on a dirt road, so you didn't hear the tires squeal. And the truck did stop. Well, then, when the truck stopped, it was like they left the front of my truck and came into the windshield of my truck and came in on top of me and started pressing me down into the seat. Like somebody was literally putting their hands on me, pressing me down into the seat. And I could not believe it because, hello, I've been a Christian my whole life. And people are like, well, if you're really a Christian, the devil, the demons can't get a hold of you or do anything to you because you've got the Holy Spirit in you. Yes, I do have the Holy Spirit in me, and so do probably all of the preachers who try to go do exorcisms and everything. But those demons can attack you. They can. Anyway, pushed me down in that seat, and before I even could think, I could not breathe. My heart started skipping beats. I could feel my heart literally palpitating and skipping beats. And I was saying, first, as the Spirit of the Lord is not fear, but love, peace, and a sound mind in my brain. But before I could even scream Jesus or anything, they had me so pressed down. And I know people are thinking, you were having a panic attack. No, I promise I wasn't. I've had a panic attack. That wasn't one. This was a physical force pushing me down in the seat. And I had no way of fighting back. And all I could think was, I'm surrounded and outnumbered. It felt like there were many of them, not just one. I said, they are going to kill me, and nobody's going to know what happened to me. They're going to think that I died of a heart attack. And all the while, I am trying my hardest to force. I am inside of myself, talking to my heart, telling my heart to beat. Because I quit thinking about them, and I started thinking about my own self and telling my heart to keep beating. That was my only way to fight them back. And then all of a sudden, I felt a warmth, like coming through the back of my seat. And then it was like a touch right between my shoulder, the lower part of my shoulder blades, and it just started pushing through me like a finger, like a warmth coming through me. And as it came through me, the finger turned into, a larger, like a hand, like hands going around my heart. And when the warmth that was being so gentle with me was pushing them out of me and away from me, because as it came to my heart, it surrounded my heart, and my heart felt warm and at peace and started beating normally. And then I could feel the warmth pushing them out of me and then away from me. And then I knew that they were still there. I could feel them still there, but there was a space, a divide between them and me that I knew they couldn't cross over. And that's our hedge of protection that's talked about in the Bible. And God sent an angel or the saints to push these people out and away from me, these beings. And so then, I didn't even have to do anything but I gathered myself for about a half a second. Then I really knew that something was trying to keep us from finding out what happened here, right? So I was like more determined. So I put my foot on the accelerator as I said, thank you, Lord. And look, y'all, he came to me without me crying out. My mind couldn't even cry out. That's how bad it was. But anyway, so then I go down the driveway and I get to the RV. But this voice came to me. It's the same voice that I'd heard in the RV before. And the voice said, call your husband. Well, anybody that knows me knows that I don't usually call my husband or anybody else for help, you know, just do it myself. And I didn't even ask him to go over there with me. You know, he thought I was silly doing all this stuff, you know, let things rest, let them lie, don't get involved. And that was sort of the attitude of most of the Christians that I knew that were my friends because, well, you know, they were worried about me. And then, again, it's not a subject that anybody likes to deal with. Who wants to deal with a bunch of people that are worshiping the devil? Sorry. I don't. You know, because it's usually a negative thing. I don't see it as being a positive thing. So I'm just going to leave it at that just so that I'm not talking ugly about anybody. I believe that anybody should do what they choose to do because that's what is allowed. And they may change their mind on who they want to follow at some point. Anyway, I got down there and the voice said, call your husband. So I look over I didn't even think I had my cell phone with me because believe it or not, back in that day, I would not even carry my cell phone half the time. Now I can't live without it, you know. But anyway, I looked over on the seat and there was my cell phone. So I picked it up and I called him and he said, what did you go over there by yourself for? And I said, well, just come over here. I said, there's such evil here. I need you to come. And so he said, okay, I'll be there in a minute. We only live 3 miles from this place. So I knew that he would be there in just a couple of minutes. And I was told to stay in the car until he got there. So I did. I sat there. And then I see a truck pulling up. And it's not my husband. And I'm like, oh, no, you know, who's this? And so here comes this truck. And it is the man that I had asked about at the shopping center. The dad, he came over to help me with the barrels. So I got out of the truck when he got there and we took the barrel out of the back of the truck and we were trying to get it open. We didn't have any luck. My husband came up. This is my ex-husband, y'all. So my husband now doesn't have anything to do with this story. But anyway, and he's a good guy. It was just circumstances that caused us to get a divorce. So anyway, he's a good guy. We weren't angry at each other or anything. But anyway, so we shouldn't have got a divorce, but we did. But anyway, let's see. It's my fault. Let's see. So they got there, and I let them stay out there trying to deal with getting the barrel open. And my mission was to go into the trailer and get the rest of her things. So I had brought tarps and boxes. And I laid the tarps out and I set the boxes up and I had, you know, boxes for books, boxes for paperwork, boxes for clothes. I was going to try to separate and divide everything so that her family wouldn't have to go through so much stuff, you know, when they came. So I was so excited because her family was coming in 2 weeks to get her things. So I got everything set up outside and then I opened the RV to go inside. And the minute that I opened the RV, this is another one of those, you can think Cathy's crazy parts if you want to. You know, I wasn't on any medication or anything. But anyway, I opened the RV and all of these thoughts started coming at me. They weren't coming from in here in my head. They were coming from out here. It's almost like I could see the words traveling through the air. And it was things like, look at this mess. You don't want to clean up this mess. You're tired. And I was like, that is ridiculous. Those aren't even my thoughts. That's nothing I would have been thinking at that time. My heart had been pumping 500 miles a minute. I was so pumped with adrenaline. I was ready to get things done. It didn't look like that big of a mess to me to begin with. There was things to pack, like if you packed up anything, but it wasn't a mess. So those weren't my thoughts. I knew that those were thoughts of discouragement to keep me from doing what I was sent there to do. And so I put out my hand and I said, I rebuke you. You have no hold here. I'm going to get her things for her family. And so they stopped and they backed away from me. And I started getting her things and taking them out there and organizing them, putting them in boxes and everything. Oh, I better look at my notes just so I don't skip anything. Sorry, hold on. Let's see. I got so caught up in my story about getting attacked by the demons. Okay, yeah, I told y'all that. I don't know if I wrote enough down either. Let's see. Okay, Okay, guess what? That's where I stopped. And so the last note I have is I put my hand out and rebuked them, and they backed off, and I went through her things. Should I end the story for today? I didn't know how far I'd get today. That seemed like a lot to me. Okay, this is going to be my memory now. Anyway, okay, so, I made them leave. I started going through her things, and I was looking at different, papers and everything, and I found some more things that had to do with the satanic church and everything, and I just felt that I did not have the manpower there that I needed spiritually to do the thing that I was doing. So I told my husband that we were going to leave, and he was like, good, I didn't want to stay out here all night. We'd already been there for like an hour and a half or something, and I had a lot of stuff, almost all of it packed up, but there were still some things I needed to go through, and I hadn't gone to the barn yet. So I said, it was starting to get dark. I said, we're going to go ahead and, it was not starting to get dark. That was a different time. Sorry. See, I've been over there several times, so that's why I had to write it down, because I wrote down every day what I was doing, because I went over there so many different times that I start mixing the story together. I promised to get my book next week. Anyway, so I told him that we were going to go ahead and leave, and he said, good, I didn't want to stay out here all night. And I turned around as I was leaving the trailer, and I said, we're going to leave now, but I'm coming back with prayer warriors. And that was like a threat to the spirits that were there, because I felt like I was in a spiritual warfare. And that's what this thing is all about. It's about a spiritual warfare. So anyway, and bless their hearts, nobody at my church, none of my Christian friends wanted me to be involved in this. They felt I was opening doors. Who's God going to use? Satan's not going to fight against himself. You've got to, and those who don't believe in all that, the bad guys aren't going to fight against the bad guys. A good guy has to come in order to fight with them and to find out what's going on. They're going to cover up for each other and all the things, So everybody gets to take their own take on this, whatever your thoughts are, and it's up to God to change your mind, or if he wants to change your mind. Everybody that listens will not hear what's being said. Anyway, so we left, and I was then really upset about the whole situation, because I went home and I was like, I need prayer warriors, I need people to come out here with me and pray while I go through her things and all this. So we went home, and I started calling people, asking them to go with me up there maybe the next day or something, before the 2 weeks anyway, to get her things, and nobody wanted to go. They were all afraid or didn't want to be involved or whatever. And so, I can take my glasses off now, because I'm doing that so y'all don't see that light, and I'm sorry about the light. I don't know how to fix this. Anyway, so I'm calling people. Well, I wound up, I had heard that there was this missionary. Oh yeah, I went to work the next day, and I had heard that there was this missionary in town, and she was staying with a friend of mine, and that if I would call her, she had been on missions in Honduras and all the places where they have all this spiritual warfare, and maybe she would know how to tell me how to battle this, because nobody at church knew. We all just prayed the scriptures and we prayed about it. We prayed the scriptures, and we said, I rebuke you and all the things. But y'all, this was this had turned into a physical battle. They just pushed my truck backwards, they could do anything to me. So anyway, I decided I would call this lady and see if her friend might be able to help me with what I should do, at this point. So and I had already called all the preachers and everything. So I call, and the lady says, I asked if she had the missionaries there staying with her, and she said yes, she did. I said, well, would you mind if I speak to her for a few minutes? And she said, well, she's not here right now. She went somewhere. And she said, is there anything I can help you with? And she was a lady from my church. And I thought, she's such a good Christian lady. She is going to be able to help me, with this. Maybe we can get some other people. I didn't know. So I told her the story, and she got all over me and reproached me about dealing with this kind of thing, and told me that, that basically she was telling me that I was, she was saying that I wasn't listening to God, that I was listening to the devil, and this kind of thing. And I was like, I finally, I try to be nice to everybody, and I was as nice as I could be for as long as I could be. And then I said, listen, I don't know who you think you are, but I do know who I am. And I said, I'm not whatever it was. And I said, what I am is I'm a child of God, and I've been caught up in a spiritual warfare. I don't even know what all I said to her. It's just I stood up to her, and I told her who I was and who I wasn't. And then I said my goodbyes to her, never spoke to her again after that. Wasn't because I didn't want to speak to her, because when people sense these things in me, they get away from me. It's not normal, it's not normal for people to live this in their actual life. I mean, we pray, we go to church, but for you to really be confronted with spirits and things, that's not normal, not in the same way that I'm confronted. Now, there are people that this happens to, but most of the time they aren't at church. They should be, because, they're very spiritually aware. But there may be people at church too, but they just don't tell anybody, because this is the kind of response they get, okay? There's people who have dreams and visions and can sense things. I know that I went to a funeral one time, and I was sitting there, and I knew there was a spirit present at the funeral, and the spirit started making noise all up in the ceiling of the church and everything. And the spirit told me that there was a pretentious spirit in the church. And I said, okay, but you're going to disrupt this church. You need to go out of here. And I was talking to the spirit, spiritually, and I saw a person react to the spirit up front. And they looked up, and they knew something was going on, but it was beyond. It was they knew, but they didn't want to accept or admit it, and they were hoping it would go away. And I'm pretty sure they just started praying against it. But anyway, things can happen. But anyway, I believe that me addressing the spirit made it to go away. So there are things that happen that people just don't want to talk about. I got off on a bunny trail, didn't I? Okay, where was I? I was at the, they told me they were coming down. I was trying to get people to help me, and the lady got me upset. And then I wound up calling 2 other people, and one of the ladies said that she would come and she would bring her daughter, her granddaughter. And I thought, well, that's 2. If the Lord says, where 2 or more gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So there was going to be 3 of us at least. She said that her and her granddaughter would stand at the doors and pray. They would not go into the trailer, and they would not touch her things. See, this is what people are afraid of, that something's going to get on them, and it can. See, look what happened to me, if they get involved. So it is true, but, we've got to be willing to fight the fight. Anyway, so that was the plan. She was going to come, bring her granddaughter. They were going to stand at the doors and pray, and I was going to go through the rest of the things. That was the plan. So time went on, and I kept talking to everybody about it at the shop. And then I guess it was just Saturday, actually. This all had happened on a Wednesday. And something else happened on Wednesday. Oh, okay, on Wednesday, I had gone back up to the shop to do a customer's hair and had told her everything about what was going on. And my mother called me, and she said, honey, this is Mom. I want you to watch this program that's on TV. And I said, well, Mom, I'm doing somebody's hair. I'm at work. And she said, well, I want you to watch this program. She said, there's this man on there, and he's a psychic, and he is helping detectives solve crimes. And she said, and you're just like him, and I think you need to take all of that stuff that you have to the police. I had been collecting stuff for 2 years at this point, I think. Was it 2 years? No, it wasn't 2 years. It was around a year, I think. Y'all have lost track of time. But anyway, for a long time, I'd been collecting evidence of things. I had some bones. I had some articles from papers. I had some other stuff that was clues as to what all had happened here. Because I was investigating, like I told the sheriff I was going to do. I had called the county for tax records. I had called the bank about who had bought the property before I found out, who actually did buy the property, and all the things I was investigating. I had all that written down, and Mother said, I think you need to take all of that to the police. So watch this show and you'll see, And I said, well, let me ask my customer. So I asked her, do you mind if I watch this show? And she said, no, I think that would be kind of neat, So we turned it on and we watched it. And it was about a psychic helping detectives to solve murders and murders, basically. And so I went ahead and called the sheriff's department. I went ahead and called the police. I don't remember who I talked to, and I made an appointment to come in, and I was supposed to come in on Thursday and take everything that I had as far as evidence into them and give it to them. So I especially wanted to give them that barrel because I didn't know what I was going to do with that barrel. So now that I called them, I knew that I could give them the barrel. I thought I was just going to have to put it out in my backyard or something like that. So anyway, it was still in the back of my truck. So anyway, the next day I go to the authorities and I bring the barrel and all of the paperwork. And when I get there, the detective says, does this have anything to do with the skull? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, when we found, does this have anything to do with the wheelchair? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, when we found the skull, we found a wheelchair. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, I said, you didn't find her skull? Or her, I don't know about any wheelchair, but you didn't find her? He said, yes, we did. And then he got real nice because he knew I didn't know that they had found her, he thought, And he said, yeah, when we found the skull, we found her skull, and we found the wheelchair. And I said, no, you didn't. I knew that they had not found her. And he said, yes, we did. I said, no, you didn't. You have not found her. And I was so mad. And he went, and he said, well, let me look at this. Are we talking about, her? I said, no, that's not what we're talking about. He goes, oh, I have the wrong case. He goes, just a minute, this isn't your case at all. Let me go find your case. So he left, and he came back, and he said, you see this room? Do you see all those stacks around this room? And I looked around the room, and there were stacks of files about probably 2 feet tall anyway, all the way around the bottom of his room. And those were the cases that he was working on of missing people and or murdered people. And he said, because half the people that are missing have been murdered, but they're just still considered missing. But anyway, so he was overwhelmed with his job. And I said, okay. I said, well, my mother thought that I should come in and give you all these things. And I started telling him the story. And he said, okay, don't tell me any more. I just want you to give me all the things that you brought. I said, we all need to go get that barrel out of the back of my truck. He said, okay, I'm going to send a couple guys out there to get the barrel. He said, I want you to come into this room and I want you to write down everything for me that you're telling me now. So don't tell me, the story. I want you to write it down for me. So he took me in he was going to take me in this room, but for some reason he set me out in the hallway. So I started writing out in the hallway, and then somebody came in the door. They had called the FBI, and so an agent from the FBI came out. So I'm sitting there writing out the story, and this person walks in the door, and then they asked me to go into this room. And I go into this room, and I know they were recording me and all the things. And they told me, but I was telling the truth. So I was just they told me to write down everything that I could remember. And so, man, I took all of my paperwork with me in there, and I wrote down how I got it, what I think's relevant about it, and all the things. And it took me a while to write the story. And every time I would get to the end of the page, Well, someone would come in and sign it and stamp it and then let me go to the next page. So that's how I told my story. And so when I got finished there, I left, and then I was just working the rest of the week. And on Saturday at 12 o'clock, the grandmother and her granddaughter were going to come to my shop, and we were going to ride together over to the property, and they were going to pray while I went through and got the rest of her things. Well, on Saturday when I was at work, I'm telling everybody how excited I am to go over there and get the rest of her things for her family. That's the least I can do. So I'm standing there, and it's like almost 12 o'clock, and I'm blow drying this lady's hair, and 4 people walked into my salon, and I was aggravated because I didn't, people walked in for haircuts all the time, and I didn't usually do walk-ins anyway because I was pretty booked, but there was nobody there but me. Everybody had taken that Saturday off or come in and done somebody and went home. There was just nobody there but me at that time. And so they walk in the door, there's 4 people, and this gets very sensitive to me, so I'm going to just try. See, I don't tell people this story very often. Anyway, so I'm standing there, and these 4 people walk in, and I said, "Can I help you?" I didn't really want to help them with anything, I was trying to get finished so I could go over to the lady's house. And they just stood there and looked at me, and I was like, "Can I help you?" And the one lady said, "I'm Jennifer Williams." And I went, that was the dead lady, or the ghost in the salon. That was her sister, the one that I had talked to that was coming to get her things. And this was just Saturday from Wednesday, and they had said it was going to be 2 weeks before they came down. And I said, "Oh my gosh," I just put my blow dryer down. I said, "I'm so happy to meet you." It sounds a weird thing to say, but I was so happy to see them. And I went over and I just hugged her, and she said, she introduced me to her husband and to the father of Jamie, the ghost in the salon. I named her Jamie. These are not real names. These are names I named her in my book. But Jamie's first husband had come. He was the dad of the children. So she introduced me to him, and she said, "And this is her daughter." I didn't even know she had a daughter. And I just looked at the young lady. She appeared to be in her 20s or so. She had been 15 when her mom went missing. And Jamie, the ghost in the salon, also had a 10-year-old boy. And I guess the daughter was maybe 12 oh no, she was 15 when her mom went missing. And she had left her mom's house and was staying at her dad's house because she didn't like the stepfather. And so that saved her life probably. But anyway, she was staying with the dad, and the little boy was still staying with the mom. And he was there the night his mom went missing. So when I met the little girl, I was just like, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." I said, "I didn't know she had a daughter. Honey, it's so nice to meet you." And I hugged her, And they were just so kind. And my customer was just like, "I'm going to go, you go ahead and talk to them." And so she left, and we all just went to the back of the salon and sat down. And of course, they just wanted to know what all had been going on in the shop, all the things that had happened, and some of it turned out to be good clues, actually. And they're police, so they can figure these things out where I can't. I did figure a whole lot out, but I'm sure that they figured a whole lot more from the things that I told them. But anyway, I just told them about all the activity, everything from, the lights flickering, the TV's changing the channel, the clock flying. I said, "There's something to do with the number 10. I said, "I keep getting the number 10 all the time." The clock flew off, and it was on 10, and I was like, I just kept getting the number 10. I said, "There's something to do with 10. I don't know if it's 10 o'clock. I don't know what the number 10 is, but there's something to do with number 10. So we went through all of this, and when it was all said and done, they thanked me and hugged me and told me if I heard anything else, to let them know and all this stuff. And that was the last time I ever saw or heard from them. And I did hear that the dad, their dad had really wanted to find out what happened to his daughter, but it didn't get solved before he passed away, and that was really sad. But it's all sad, but that was extremely sad. But the good news is, when he went to heaven, he got to see her there, and then he got to know what happened, and I'm sure he's helping in the case now. Anyway, so they left, and I thought, well, you know, we won't hear any more from the ghost, because her family came, and I'm sure the only part I had in this was to help her family get all of those, everything in that RV, so that they could have evidence to try to solve this. Because, you know, my strong belief is that when someone is murdered, that there's a cry from the earth that opens her mouth to swallow their blood. It's what the Bible says, up to the heavens for justice, not vengeance, but justice in a situation. So I feel that that's what I was there for, was to help bring about justice, or at least some closure for the family, right? So I gave them all her, or they got all of her things, and I gave them, you know, what I had that was hers, and then they knew that what I had taken to the police and everything. So that was that, with that part of the story. What time is it? It's 11. I'm going to go ahead and go for another little bit, and because I want to tell y'all a little bit more of what happened. I don't know if I'll get finished today, but who knows? There's still quite a bit to this story. Well, anyway, they left, and so I didn't think we would hear anything else from the ghost, because, you know, I had done everything that I thought was my part in this story or situation. Well, little time went on, and then I was in the shop one day, and I heard this bang. You know, I mean, I thought that the electrical box got hit. It was that loud. It was so loud, and it sounded like it was in my back room or something, and I was the only one there. And I went back there, and I checked my electrical box, and I looked at everything, and I couldn't find anything wrong. And I thought, what in the world was that noise, you know? And I didn't worry about it, because I thought just one of those things, because I was used to weird things happening there now. So I did mention it to a couple people. Y'all heard this loud bang in the shop. I don't know what it was, but if you hear anything, you know, we'll have to call an electrician out here. I kept thinking that the breaker box had, like, tried to explode or something. So then a little later on, I'm going to stick with that story in a second. One of the girls, one of the hairstylists was working, and she called me on the phone. It was early in the morning, and she had just been there about a few minutes, and she was fixing to have clients, but she had went in and opened the door and everything, but nobody was there but her. And all of a sudden she called me. She said she had run out of the salon and got on her cell phone and called me, because she heard this loud bang in the salon, and it scared her half to death. Those are not the words she used, but scared her half to death. And so she said, I said, I know what noise. When she described it, I said, I know what noise you're talking about, but it doesn't sound like a gunfire. It almost sounds like a gunfire, but it doesn't quite sound like a gunfire. But I don't know what it is. She said, I know. That's what, like she described it, it sounded the same thing that I heard. I said, I don't know what that is. She said, Cathy, it happened in the air right next to me. And I said, okay. And so I said, it's okay, don't be scared, just go back in there. She's just trying to give us a clue. I guess Jamie hasn't left yet. So she went back in, and everything was fine, and we kept talking about this. Well, one of my customers came in, and she was a beautiful young lady, went in beauty pageants and all the things, just a beautiful young lady. But she was one of a teenage kind of customer. And she, you know, they were all little detectives with me, and her mom and I were real good friends. These were good Christian people. And she said, well, do you think that, I had told everybody that I had found out that there had been a, let me see, I don't think I've told y'all this, let me think a second. Part of my investigation revealed that there had been, I haven't told y'all that part yet. So I'm going to back up. So now you know we're going to get to this part where there's all these kinds of things making noise in the salon. But let me back up a little bit. So that's why I don't like to tell my story live, because, you know, when I'm writing, I can remember what happened. But anyway, okay, let me back up. What happened was, I was at home one day. I decided that I was going to take the day off. It was a Wednesday, I remember. And I was going to take the day off because I needed to clean house and do all the things. Sorry, I'm getting lots of messages, y'all. And so I took the day off, and I was the kind of person that, you know, got up at about 6 at that time. Now I get up at 5. But I got up at 6, went out, fed my horses, the animals, all the things, and then got ready and, got a shower and went to work and everything. And then I went to bed about 10 o'clock, But anyway, let's see. I got up. I went ahead and got up about 6 o'clock, and I was cleaning house, and probably, I don't think it was even 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. I got so sleepy, and I was not the kind to get sleepy back then. I was hyperactive. I went all day long. Anyway, I got so sleepy that I thought I am going to lay down and take a nap. And I really don't think I was asleep, y'all, or maybe I was. I don't know, but I can just tell you that I feel like I was put down. I laid down on my bed, and I may have been dreaming, because you can have dreams that are real too, but I'm not sure because it doesn't feel like I was asleep. But anyway, I just know that I got really tired and laid down on my bed, and all of a sudden I'm awake and I'm in the back seat of a car, and I can see the people, the man, not the man, I can see the woman in front of me, the driver of the car, and she has this long, thick hair, but she's a real big person, and she keeps turning around looking at me, and I'm like, what is wrong with that woman? She keeps turning around looking at me like something's wrong, and I'm like, where am I? I'm so quiet, I'm so still, and I realize now, even in my mind, I realize that I am the lady that went missing, and I am in the back seat of a car, and I am seeing the person that's driving the car, and they keep looking over their shoulder, and it's such a big woman, she just like lifts herself over to turn around and look at me. Every time she turns around, she just lifts her whole top of her body around and turns around and looks at me, and I'm so quiet and peaceful and still. It's not bothering me. I'm just noticing that she is distressed, and she keeps looking at me, and I keep thinking, that woman is so big, and she doesn't even look like a woman. I don't think that's a woman. I think that's a man dressed up like a woman. And then I look over in the other seat, and I see this real skinny, petite, blonde-haired woman, and she's like all nervous, and she keeps reaching over and grabbing the wheel because she almost runs us off the road every time he turns around to look at me, and she's trying to get the steering wheel where he won't run us off the road, but he keeps turning around and looking at me, and I think this is the oddest dream I'm having, but it doesn't feel like a dream. Anyway, then I look up and out the window, I can see the pine trees. Well, first of all, the first thing that I see when I look out the window is that we're stopped. We have stopped at a stop sign. It's like we're going this way, and we're dead into this road, okay? And we've stopped here, and I can see that we've stopped, and on that road, I can see pine trees sticking up. And we're going to turn to the right, and the woman that is driving the car is really driving erratically, and he waits for half a second, and then he makes that turn. I was worried that we were going to get hit from the side, which my head is by the door in the seat, and I'm like, they're going to run right into my head, But the car gets by us, and he pulls out, and I'm looking, and I see these pine trees that look like pencils standing in a row. I don't know why that seems significant to me. So they seem like pencils standing in a row. We turn, and we go over this bridge, and then we turn just after we cross that bridge. We turn to the right real sharp, like we're going to go down the embankment or something, and that's where they take me. And I then am taken back in memory to how we got in the car in the first place. And how we got in the car in the first place is I was at their house, and they were talking to me, and all of a sudden the little woman is after me, and why I run from this little woman, it wasn't me, that's why. I wouldn't have been running from the little woman. Well, maybe I would have, I can't say that. I didn't know the spirit herself in person. She may have been a more, I don't know, I think she was cowgirl and all the things, and she might have had a mouth and an attitude, but if she felt danger, I don't know, she might run. Not me, I'm going to stand there and get killed, I'm an idiot. But anyway, when I'm her in this vision or dream, I run from this little woman and I run out in this barn and I'm hiding from her, and all of a sudden they catch me, and I guess that they destroy me there, and then they take me to this car. Now still then, and then I woke up. I remember being in the barn and what I saw in the barn and everything, and then I woke up. And then I wasn't sure if it was two different places, if I was actually in their barn or if I was in a different barn when those events happened and they chased me out of a different place, like maybe her RV and her barn. You know, maybe that's where I was, that she chased me out of, because I couldn't see the surroundings that well. I just saw the barn. I didn't see the house that I was in. So I'm not sure that she wasn't taking me back to show me, you know, that they had killed her over at her house and then took her over to their house and then took her down the street. So that part I'm not clear on. I never could figure out whose barn I was in. But anyway, I woke up. And when I woke up or came out of the dream or whatever, I was crying. I was so upset. I was crying. And I was supposed to go up to work. I was supposed to go up to work. No. Yeah, I went to work the next day. Oh, no, I was crying when I woke up out of the dream, and then I finished the day out at home, and then the next day I went to work, and I was still kind of taken back by all this because, you know, I was so emotionally involved in all of this because of the family and everything, and they don't know me from Adam. It probably was just another person to them. It just meant a lot to me, you know. I don't know. I've never heard from them since, so I don't know, and I'm sure that they're not supposed to you know, talk to me or anything because it might be mess up the investigation or something. I don't know. But anyway, so anyway, I went to work and I was not in a good mood at all, and I was trying to be, but I wasn't. I was feeling kind of down, so I told everybody that I would go get lunch. We had worked all morning, and I told everybody that I would go get lunch that day. Usually someone else went and got lunch because I was too busy. Well, I went and got lunch, and when I was coming home from town, getting the lunch, I got to this place in the road where I started feeling weird. I just started feeling weird, and I started looking around me, and I saw the road that we had been on in my dream, and where it had come to stop at that street to turn. And so I just immediately looked up to my left, and sure enough, I saw those pencil trees that I would have seen from that side. I saw those pencil trees, and then I went down and I went over the bridge that we would have turned on, which was the bridge right next to my beauty salon, and the embankment that they took me down. So I know that they took her down there to dispose of her. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I was so freaked out. And I got into work, and I was still kind of shaken and upset, you know, and I was trying to not let anybody see me, but I had all their food, so I had to take it in there. So I just took the food in. I said, y'all, I'm going to go next door and get a Coke. I was trying to shake off the realization that it was right there that all this happened. And so I brought all their food in and everything, and I went next door to the convenience store, and I had on a dress that day, y'all. I just remember this. The only reason there's only one reason that that's important, but I usually wore pants all the time. You know, I wear blue jeans all the time. But anyway, black jeans or black slacks. You know, but I don't wear dresses very often. Anyway, I had on a dress that day, and I went in the convenience store, and as I walked in, one of the customers that came in the shop walked in, and he was like, "Hey girl, don't you look pretty today?" Because I had on a dress, and he didn't ever see me dressed up. And I said, "Thank you," you know. And I was going back there to get a Coke, and so he had my attention. I was looking across the store, didn't pay attention to anybody else. And then I got my Coke, and I turned around, and I came up to the counter, and there was 2 or 3 people waiting in line at the counter. And the lady that was ringing the customers up was a good friend of mine. She was a Native American lady, and I have a lot of Native American in me, and so we have this connection. But anyway, she was working at the cash register, and she said, "Hi, Cathy." I said, "Hey." And so she's ringing everybody up, and there's this man in front of me, and I'm sitting there waiting for him to get finished. And all of a sudden, the man in front of me turns around and looks at me, and I felt a stab go through my stomach to my backbone in my abdomen. Y'all, this is gory. This is true crime stuff, okay? If you can't take it, just move along. Sorry, I want you to stay, but I'm just saying, I don't leave out details now. I give all the details. I felt it go right in my stomach and all the way to my backbone. And I passed out. Everything went dark, and I was falling to the ground. My legs gave out from under me, and it was the person that had been in the car that kept turning around and looking at me. But this was a big man, but I knew that the person in the car had been a man with a wig on. He was dressed up as a woman. Anyway, when this person turned around and looked at me, I felt them stab me. I was fainting. I thought I hit the floor. All of a sudden, I felt hands go up under my armpits and lift me up. I had no strength in my legs or anything. Lift me up and say to me, "This is your only get your courage up. This is your only chance. Find his mark." And he's still looking at me. He's looking at me in my eyes, and he's like looking down because I was falling. And the lady at the register goes, "Are you okay, Cathy?" And I went, "Yeah." And I'm just looking at him, and he just looks in my eyes for a minute, and then he looks away from me, but I could tell he knew something was up. He looks away from me, and I am looking at him. I'm looking at his neck, his back, his legs. He had on shorts. I'm looking for any kind of a birthmark, anything. And I start saying, I'm praying, I'm like, "There is no mark, Lord, there is no mark." He had nothing. I could see nothing on him. There's no birthmark, there's no scar. I'm thinking birthmark, scar, something like that. I see nothing on him. I'm like, "There is no mark, Lord, there is no mark." And then he reached his arm out to pay the cashier, and his sleeve lifted just a little bit, and I saw the bottom of a tattoo. And so I reached over, and I grabbed his sleeve, and I ripped his sleeve up like this, and I could see the tattoo. I'm not going to say what it is because it's identifying. It is identifying. Everybody would know what it is, and I can't right now. But anyway, he had a tattoo, and he went, and he jerked his sleeve down, and he looked at me like he would eat me alive. And I just stood there and looked at him, because then I knew who he was. He's the one that stabbed her. And he goes, "That's just something I got when I was a kid." And I wanted him to know, first of all, I knew I was talking to the devil. And I wanted the devil to know. The devil already knew I knew, but I wanted him to know from me that I knew. And I said, I wanted him to know that I knew he was a liar. And I said, "Oh, well, it still looks pretty good to me." I said, "My husband got a tattoo, on his forearm when he was a kid." I said, "But it's really faded now, and he needs to get it re-inked. Your tattoo still looks pretty good to me." I wanted him to know that I know you didn't get that when you were a kid. I know you're lying to me, and I know who you are. And he got it. And he was mad as he could be. He had been, right after I had almost fainted, and he was standing there, he took out a wad of money this big, and he was like pulling hundreds out of it to show me his money, like he was trying to be bragging or something. But then when I did that to his arm, his whole attitude toward me changed, and I just stood there. I thought I was going to die during all this, y'all, but I was willing to. I don't know why, but I was just stood there, and I looked at him, and he paid the cashier, and then he turned around and gave me another bad look as he walked out the door. And the cashier goes, "Cathy, what's wrong? What happened? Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "That man is evil." She goes, "Oh, no." She goes, "I've always had a bad feeling about him." I said, "Well," I think he's the one that killed her. And I can't prove that, y'all. It's just spiritually, I know. I can't have no evidence. I can't name names or anything because I can't prove it. But someday it'll be proven. You watch and see. Anyway, she said, you know, I've always had a bad feeling about him and his poor wife. I said, what are you talking about? She goes, oh, he comes up all the time without her, and everybody worries about her, and she's come up here begging me for money. And I said, he just had wads of $100 bills. She goes, he won't give her any money or anything. And I said, you know, it all fit, right? So when I walked outside, he was standing at his truck staring at me. And I just stopped and stood there and stared right back. And finally, after a couple minutes, he went on. And I went, y'all, I don't have any bravery, really. I know that I have angels. I was like, do you see that I have angels? So anyway, I was just so worked up. I had been so sad when I went in there, and now I was ready for the fight again when I came out. And I went back. I knew it was a fight. I knew all this time that it was a spiritual warfare, and that God had his saints and angels and people that were going to be battling in it, and the devil had his lost souls and demons and fallen angels that were battling in it against each other. That's my thought, okay? So I went back over to the shop and I told everybody what was going on, because I really thought they were going to kill me during this time. I was told they were. And I thought, everybody's going to know what I know, so that if I'm not the one to continue in it, then somebody else will, you know? So I told everybody what was going on. And of course, they were just as interested and wanted to help as much as I did. It's just for some reason, they did see the things happen, but they didn't know how to, you know, figure out what was happening. I guess God just gave me an analytical mind or something. I don't know. Anyway, I told them all what was going on and everything, and they were like, oh my God, that guy's a weirdo. You know, he's always driving up here on his four-wheeler with deer horns on it. Well, that wasn't that unusual in that area, because everybody kind of hunted around there and had four-wheelers with deer horns on them and everything. But everybody knew him to be a recluse and a weird guy and all the things. I had never spoken to him before. I had seen him drive by with the four-wheeler and the deer horns and all that, but I'd never paid that much attention, you know. So anyway, time went on, and let's see what happened next after that. Oh yeah, I went out to get my mail one day. My mailbox was on the outside of the salon, and I went out to get my mail, and that guy drove his truck almost up on the sidewalk next to me. There was no cars parked over there. The parking spaces go this way. He was driving this way, and he almost went up on the curb where I was walking to go get my mail, and he stopped right next to me. And he rolls his window down and he looks at me like this out his window. And I just looked back at him, and then I just stood there and I crossed my arms and I just stood there and looked at him. He didn't say a word to me. I didn't say a word to him. But in my mind I was like, yeah, you better look at who's standing behind me. You see that guy? That's Michael, the archangel, assigned to protect the children of God. And I just stood there. And he was trying to intimidate me. And then he just drove off and drove away. Well, I think I'm going to have to stop it there for today, because I'm forgetting, and apparently it's time for me to stop today. I will get my book by next week so I can remember the rest of the story. I know the rest of the story, but I'm going to get it out of sequence. So I'm going to have to order one of my own books so that I can finish telling y'all this story. But I couldn't find my manuscript or anything. So anyway, I'm going to finish there for today. That gave you a lot of information right there, but there's a whole lot more, and I will get my book and finish it out next week. And then I have other stories that I can get to. But please, if you're interested in sharing a story, something like this maybe has happened to you, or maybe you've just had a haunted house that you lived in or something, you know, we can talk about all those things. You know, we don't talk about those things at church or anything. And that, where are we supposed to be spiritual at? At church. If you have a ghost in your house or something, you should be able to tell the people at church, and they should come over there with you and help you figure out who that is, make it tell its name, and either make it go or or figure out what the story is. You know, I don't think we should run and hide from spirits. Anyway, love y'all. Thank you for listening to me, and I guess I'll talk to you next week. Oh, you know what? Before I leave, I'm going to tell y'all that I want to teach art online on that SKOOL, incorrectly spelled school site. I guess that's for attention. But I'm not sure. I'm supposed to start on September the 2nd, and I plan to do that. But I don't know how good it's going to. I think it's going to be good because I'm going to just talk about what it's going to be like, and I may start a painting. But I haven't got everything in order, you know, thousands of paintings or any of that stuff yet. It's the beginning. So if you want to start with me from the beginning, then come and join me. I will put a link to Sharon's jewelry if she hasn't, and I will put a link to that website if y'all want to start painting with me, because a lot of my friends have told me that they want to paint with me, but they don't live here, and so I'm going to do it as tutorials online. So thank you, and it's going to be called Art and Crafts Tutorials. I try to keep everything simple, and I'll put a link on here to it. Anyway, thank y'all, and I'll see you next week. I don't want to go longer than this. Thanks, bye.